Hello and welcome to our Inclusive Learning Circle series. Today we are going to be talking about AAC and communication partners. And I would just like to welcome you and introduce our speakers for today. I am Jennifer Wright, and I am an open access content lead for AAC. And I am joined today by my colleagues Dana Albrecht, who is an AAC specialist here with the Placer County Office of Education, as well as one of our open access regional leads. And also Tina Peralta, who is an AAC coach in the West Contra Costa Unified School District, and also another one of our open access regional leads. So I'd like to welcome them and give them a big thank you for preparing this presentation for all of you today. So just a quick review, if you have not been to any of our open access presentations, we are really committed to the following principles of UDL and to really making sure that our presentations and related materials are as accessible as possible. So a few strategies you'll see that we use and will be used today. Our slides all have a simple background with high contrast real text. We have digital and print materials that will be available via QR codes and tiny URLs. We make sure that any images we have, we use alternative text, and we're going to provide many examples and non-examples and also opportunities and options for participation and feedback. So we have a home-based document that we will link in the chat, but that you can also get via this QR code. Just so you know, this is a running document. So if you've attended any of our Inclusive Learning Circle series presentations in the past, you will see that this is added to that document. So another thing, if you haven't attended any of them and you're interested in going back to one of the topics that you may have missed or that you might be interested in listening to, you can also go back on this document and access not only the slides, but also the recording. So just want to make sure that everyone knows that that is available. Today, we're going to ask you to participate a little bit and in different ways. Today, we may not use all of these, but these are different ways that we ask for you to participate in our sessions. So just so you're prepared that you may be asked to do something. And here is actually that first opportunity. So as we get started today, on this last week before most of us go on vacation, there is a little marshmallow snowman activity, a little bit of a how are you feeling check-in. So what I'd like you to do is put your name, your role, and which number snowman describes how you are feeling. So I realize that this week it may be changing daily, daily, and actually might even be changing hourly. So let's go with how you are feeling right now. So I'll give you a minute to do that. Ooh, it looks like a lot of us are 7s and 8s and a few 3s. All right, well, hopefully after this, you will feel a little bit better, maybe more like a 1 or a 2, maybe even a 5. And then we'll end this week very strong. Okay, so again, if you aren't familiar with open access, this is just a brief explanation of who we are. We are one of the statewide special education resource leads within the statewide system of support. We are grounded in the foundational belief that with access to quality instruction, all students can engage, actively participate, and learn within inclusive settings. And what makes our project unique is that we highlight the importance of learning and participation for all through our 3 project areas: universal design for learning, assistive technology, and augmentative alternative communication. So on this page, you will see a link to a flyer that if you're interested in finding out more about our grant project, it will really review the different levels of support that we offer, which include universal supports, targeted supports, and intensive supports. So, our path today, well, we just finished the opening and about open access. So, we are going to do a quick introduction to communication partners. And then we're going to spend the bulk of our time talking about strategies that can be used to develop our skills as communication partners. And then we will wrap it up with some question and answers and just a quick closing. Okay, so communication partners, who are they? A communication partner is any person who interacts with an AAC user to support, model, and respond to their communication. This can include family members, peers, teachers, paraprofessionals, therapists, anyone in our user's environment. So, why communication partners are important? We know that with our AAC users, they tend to be lopsided partners in conversation because we know that verbal partners tend to dominate most interactions and ask a lot of times yes and no questions, really not leaving a lot of room for our students to truly express their thoughts and ideas. We know that adult partners also, unless they're being very thoughtful and intentional, don't necessarily provide many opportunities for our AAC users to initiate or even make comments that pertain to the topics of conversation that are going on in their classrooms. Unfortunately, we know that individuals who use AAC are frequently spoken about, but not to. And for children who use AAC, most of their communication interactions are with adults rather than their peers. So in supporting AAC use, adult partners also tend to focus more on communication tools. This is something we really are trying to make sure we shift away from. It's really about communication, and it's really about engagement and participation in activities and interaction. And it's really not about can they always use their tool or use a specific tool to participate. We want to make sure that communication is the goal, that the tool is not the goal. So that's what a little bit of background on why communication, why this information about really building our skills as communication partners is important. All right, so that was just a quick introduction, and we are now just going to jump into the meat of this presentation, and I am going to turn it over to Tina, who's going to get us started on building skills of our communication partners.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jen. So let's first look at this quote from Bickelman and Miranda, which says that an AAC system alone does not make someone a competent communicator any more than a piano makes a musician or a basketball and a hoop make an athlete. So in order for our students with AAC to become competent communicators, they need to have an effective communication partner who are responsive to their attempts to communicate, who are engaging, and who are able to create multiple communication opportunities for them. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next slide. So, in order to become a responsive communication partner, we would have to honor and respond to all of our students' communication attempts. And to do this, we want to recognize where our students' attention is at and follow their lead instead of having them comply to our own agenda. We also want to acknowledge what our student is attempting to communicate, whether they communicate it verbally or through non-speaking forms. And after acknowledging their communication attempt, we may reflect and model this on their AAC device or tool without having them say it again on their AAC system. So we want to avoid saying, okay, now say it on your AAC device. So we honor all of those communication attempts. We also want to observe what our student is doing or looking at the moment, and then use their AAC tool to narrate what they are seeing or doing. So this is what we call parallel play. So our goal is to model more statements instead of questions. But if we do ask questions, we want to make sure that we use more open-ended than yes, no questions. And it's also important to avoid over-reliance on prompts and to remember to only provide prompts when it is really necessary. Okay. So now we are going to see a video of a communication partner responding to a child's communication attempts. And as you watch it, observe how the communication partner would recognize the child's focus of attention, which in this video would be the sticks. And then also observe how she would acknowledge the child's non-speaking attempts by saying trade every time the child tries to get the sticks from her. Then you'll also notice in this video that she would narrate what the child was doing by saying, we're playing the sticks, and at the same time, modeling the message on the AAC device. Okay, so we're going to play that video.
Toy? Or do you want sticks? Oh, you want that stick? Sticks. I'm gonna play my sticks too. Trade. Trade. We're playing the sticks.
All right, so that's her on recognizing all the child's attempts at communication, even it was expressed in a non-speaking way. All right, so now we are okay. So another thing to keep in mind is to increase our students' engagement. So it's important to follow our child's lead and focus our activities around topics that are highly interesting, motivating, relevant, and meaningful to our students. When we follow our students' lead, it would increase their engagement, and this increase in engagement would facilitate generalization. We also want to ensure that our activities are always age respectful and developmentally appropriate. So think about what typically developing students at their age would be interested at. So for example, a high school student would probably be more interested to listen to Taylor Swift songs instead of listening to Wheels on the Bus. All right, so always be age respectful and developmentally appropriate. Okay, all right, so I'm going to pass the presentation to Dana.
All righty. So another way, or one of the ways that we can help to keep our students engaged, is to avoid what we call habituation. So habituation is when our brain stops attending to something because it's experienced that something over and over again. Like, for example, when you're driving on autopilot, or you're going through the motions of your morning, the routines that you have, and you're doing it all without thinking. So if you think about it for a second, like what are some of the routines that you have every day, and then you don't even remember that you did it. You drove home and you're like, gosh, I don't even remember driving home. Or maybe you take a medication every morning. You're like, did I take that medication or did I not take that medication? All of those things can be kind of habituated to the point that we just don't even think about them and process them. And so when we have a routine that's become habituated, or it has very little change that occurs over and over, each day, we start to tune out to what's happening. And so think about things like your circle time, and the routines that you have in those. Our students do circle time. A lot of our students do circle time almost every morning. And how many years are they going to do circle time every morning? How many clouds and how many suns are they going to put on that calendar before they start to kind of tune it out? So students that are on autopilot or who have habituated to something, they're not engaged in learning. They're not making new connections. They're just going through the steps because they know they have to and they know what the steps are and they could probably do it in their sleep. But they're zoning out. They might start to show some behaviors that are, that they're experiencing boredom. And so we don't want that. We don't want these passive learners. We want active learners so that they can make those connections with what we're presenting to them. So the next slide. So how might we avoid habituation, right? But still, we want to make sure that we're providing the framework and the structure of our routines. Well, we can change up one element at a time. Sometimes we refer to this as repetition with moderate differences. So we talk maybe we might take a different route through campus. Do you want to go this way to get to the library, or do you want to go that way to get to the library today? Maybe we're going to change up the song that we're using to learn something. So if we've been using the same math song over and over again for learning to count by tens, maybe we find a new song for counting by tens. Maybe we have somebody else lead the routine. Maybe we have a student do the lunch count instead of an instructional assistant one day. Or maybe we use a different kind of a writing utensil. Maybe we change one word. Instead of saying, who's not here today? Maybe we start to introduce a new word. Who is absent today? We might do the opposite, right? Instead of counting how many days are left in the month, instead of counting how many days have already occurred. Changing how something that's done. We can do it fast this time, or we can do it slow. We could sing the songs really quiet. We can turn it up louder. So we can change things up just a little bit to catch attention. One of the tricks that I use all the time is when I want somebody's attention, I start to whisper. It catches their attention. So just changing up one little thing kind of can get us away from that habituation and that passive participation. We really need to be looking for those signs of boredom. Are they checking out? Are they just going through the motions without making those new connections? Instead of always directing an activity and hoping that they're going to comply with it, we can help, or we can follow their lead, just like that video that we showed with the sticks. And she was following his lead to experience those new experiences and connect their prior knowledge to how something might happen. We also might take a turn using their communication tools. That might be a little bit different, and that might catch their attention. Or we also encourage problem solving, pointing out what's not right, not working. Maybe we did a little bit of sabotage and we forgot to do something on purpose, so that they have a chance to point it out and tell us that something in the routine didn't go the way they expected it to. And then there's always waiting. We wait and we wait. And then we wait some more before we jump in, and give them that opportunity to kind of process it and give their response. And then sometimes we just wait and see if they're catching on to some of those environmental cues and see if that's enough. So, for example, maybe it's a rainy day, like it is here today, and it is lunchtime, and you see them lining up for lunch to go out the door because that's part of the routine. You might say, hey, I see you lining up at the door for lunch. You're right, it is time for lunch. But do you remember we said it's raining outside? And then see if they put two and two together and realize, oh, we're not going out for lunch, we're staying in. So all of those kinds of things will help us to kind of avoid that passive learning that comes when we do the same thing the same way and are exposed to the same things the same way over and over again, so that we can make those really solid learning connections. Okay, I'm going to pass it back to Tina.
Okay, so Dana gave us a lot of examples on how to avoid habituation and some creating opportunities for communication as well. So effective communication partners would want to create a lot of multiple opportunities to elicit communication from students with AAC. And there are a lot of strategies out there to do that. And so one of the things that we can do is provide barriers and restrictions. We can introduce communication temptations. We can also use a strategy which is known as sabotage. And we can also provide a pause or wait time. And we're going to talk about all of these strategies in the next slides. All right. So some of the ways that we can provide barriers and restrictions would include manipulating the environment so our student cannot physically get to something easily. We can also prevent them from having easy access to material. So for example, we can place preferred items out of reach so that our student would be encouraged to request help. Another way to provide barrier and restriction is to limit access to preferred items so our student will be encouraged to request for more. So, or maybe place a preferred item in a tightly closed container so that our student will have the opportunity to request open. So essentially, the goal for providing barriers and restriction is to encourage our student to spontaneously initiate communication for the purpose of requesting action or requesting recurrence. So it would be more than just requesting for preferred items alone. All right. So this time, we're going to talk about temptations. Similar to providing barriers and restrictions, the goal for providing temptation is to encourage our student to initiate communication by creating curiosity to something unknown or unfamiliar. So we can introduce a new, unfamiliar, and exciting item or activity to attract our students' attention and pique their interest. Okay? So here is a video that shows a communication partner using barriers, restrictions, and temptations to elicit communication during a bubbles activity. So I know that a lot of SLPs like myself, Jen, and everybody else, and Dana are really into bubbles, and students are also into bubbles. Yeah, so that's one of our favorite activities, bubbles, especially the preschool SLPs, right? So as you watch this video, notice how the communication partner would tempt the little girl with the bubbles. Then she will give the unopened bubbles to the child to encourage her to request open. And then after opening the bubble, she would wait for the child to direct her action before blowing the bubbles. Okay, so let's go ahead and watch that video.
All kids love bubbles, but they don't know how to use them themselves. And so these are another good opportunity for them to ask for help or ask us to blow the bubbles or even to open. Can I open?
You might blow up.
Open, we'll blow up. Okay, here we go. Blow it. Blow up. You can.
Right, so in the video, the child uses speech to communicate. However, we may use the same strategy to elicit communication from a student who uses AAC. All right. Okay, now another helpful strategy to provide communication opportunities is through sabotage. And when we do sabotage, what we do is we disrupt a familiar routine or activity to elicit a reaction from our student. This may include committing an intentional mistake or pretending to forget something during a typical classroom routine. So for example, if we typically pour juice in a cup during snack time, we may deliberately forget to give our student a cup and make the mistake of giving her the juice. We may also do something silly, strange, or unexpected, such as, it's the season where a lot of us would put on Santa hat or wear Christmas lights around our neck. And we can do that to elicit a reaction from our student. Okay. All right, so here is a video that shows sabotage. And in this video, the dad would sabotage the situation by forgetting to put on one of the baby shoe before they go outside, and observe how the baby would respond to the sabotage. Let's go ahead and watch that.
Sure. All right, let's go play. You ready to go outside?
All right, let's go outside.
What's wrong?
I think.
What's wrong?
I think.
Hey, Noe, what's going on? Look. What's wrong? Oh, what do you need? Hey, what is it? You need your shoe?
Yeah.
Say, need shoe.
Yeah.
Need shoe.
Yeah, so again, the child in the video uses speech to communicate, and however, the strategy may also be used to provide communication opportunities to our students who use AAC. All right. So when communicating with our students with AAC, we want to avoid over-reliance on prompts, especially those hand-over-hand prompts. And this is something that we need to remind ourselves often, because how many of you have seen adults in the classroom provide hand-over-hand to students? Right? It's a common practice to provide hand over hand, but that's something that we want to remember to avoid when we're teaching our student to use AAC. So instead of providing physical prompts, it's more powerful to introduce a 5 to 10-second pause, or what we call wait time. And when we pause, we allow our students to process what we said, and we give them time to compose their own messages and give them their own conversational turn. So the study shows that the use of a pause or a wait time is more effective than repeating, because when we repeat, this could interfere with our students' processing. Pausing or waiting is also more powerful or more helpful than a question or a command, because questions and commands prevent our students, or when we do more question and command, this would make our students more prompt dependent, and that is what we want to avoid. I remember, when I was beginning SLP, I had a student who would always wait for me to say, "What do you want?" before he would initiate communication. So that's something we want to avoid. All right, so now we are going to watch a video that shows how to introduce a pause or a wait time. So the video would show you how much time, how you would pause. And okay, so let's watch that video and then we're going to talk about it. All right. Okay, it's going to be a little longer than the ones that we watched earlier, but bear with us.
Pause together. I have my core first open, and I'm going to give a prompt, and then I'm going to count out loud so that you know how long it is. Then we'll do it again, and I will be silent and just count in my head, and that gives you kind of an idea of how long it feels, but it really isn't that long. Here we go.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
How are you? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that didn't feel terribly long. I'm going to do it again.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
How are you? Okay, so I waited 10 seconds both times. Now I could give another prompt and say, "Are you feeling pretty good today?"
Pretty good.
Or we might go to your feelings. Okay, so I gave another prompt and then I waited another 10 seconds.
All right, so that's how we can introduce an expectant pause or a wait time. So in this strategy, or in this video, she was providing a pause when she was modeling on a high-tech AAC device, but we can also do this strategy when we're modeling on a non-electronic AAC tool like a paper-based core board. All right. Okay. So now, as communication partners, we want to remember to implement these partner strategies during naturally occurring activities throughout the day. So you want to set up your environment so that there are barriers and restrictions that can elicit communication from the student. So for example, maybe we can give the student an open bag of apples so that he can request for help during snack time. Or maybe pause and wait for the student to initiate communication before handing him a preferred toy during free play. So identify those opportunities during daily routines in your classroom or in your therapy room that may provide opportunities for our students to initiate communication. And providing opportunities may be part of already existing routines and does not have to require extra planning on your part. All right. Yeah, so I'm gonna pass it on to Dana.
Yeah, so I'm going to share some additional strategies that facilitators can use to support AAC users in developing their language proficiency. And those include aided language modeling, the use of routines, incorporating choice making into our daily activities, and scripting. And so we're going to go into each of those with a little bit more detail. So starting with modeling, specifically, we're talking about aided language modeling. This is where the connections really all begin. Modeling is an intervention approach that we use when a communication partner is demonstrating the use of the AAC symbols and words and phrases during everyday interactions. And the goal is not to make the student communicate on command. So we're not telling them to do something, but really we're showing them how language can be used meaningfully and in the context in which it occurs. And so it's really providing our students with a live example of communication in action. And sometimes we refer to this process as modeling without expectation. And what that might look like is when we're speaking, we will simultaneously, the partner, the facilitator, will simultaneously point to the AAC symbol, whether it's on a high-tech device or on a communication board, something no-tech. And this really helps the student to make a connection between what we're saying with our spoken language as well as what they're seeing with that symbol. And we do this not in naturally occurring activities, their daily routines, so that we're really modeling real life, meaningful expectations and communication. And some examples might be that we point to more during snack, or we point to turn page during story time, or maybe we're going to point to and say help when the student is struggling to put a puzzle piece in. So when we're doing this, we're focusing on that interaction, that activity that we're doing. We're not focusing on the tool, as Jen brought up earlier. And we can do this by emphasizing what's happening in the activity or in our environment, or what's already happened maybe, and what's being experienced, rather than focusing on the device. And by doing this, our language models really center around participation and enjoyment and engagement. And really that's what communication is all about, right? It's connecting. It's not about, pushing a button or pointing to something on a board. We also want to keep it very natural and repetitive. So repeated exposure gives us lots of opportunities to understand patterns and to make connections. So for example, if every time you point to the symbol for different, the materials are switched out to something different, we might start to make that connection that different means we're going to get something that's not in front of us or that we don't currently have. So each exposure to different is reinforcing the outcome of that word. When we model, we need to be mindful of where they are in their language journey and in their language proficiency. We might want to model, or not might, we're going to model just a little bit more than where they are right now. because we want to show them what comes next and how they can keep expanding what they're doing. And so if we're seeing their developmental level is using, a couple of words, we might do a couple of words and a little bit more than that. We're going to use short phrases. We're going to comment. We're going to use sentences that are aligned with where they are and what they're, on their language journey and their developmental journey. Okay, when we're modeling, there's a lot of importance to it because it's really teaching, as I said, language naturally. And it's allowing students to see how the symbols represent the words and ideas in real interactions, as I said, too. So modeling is really helping them to support their comprehension, helping them to understand that connection between the symbol and the word or the action and the experience. It also encourages participation. So when students see communication used effectively, they're likely to try to do the same thing, right? It's working for them. I'm going to try it too. It also might help reduce some of that reliance on prompts that we were talking about as students start to initiate communication without always needing an adult to help, to give them that push or that instruction. So we want to make sure to remember that modeling is about showing and not asking. Again, we're modeling without expectation, showing them how it could be done, but not asking them to do it. This graphic that you see here is a great reminder for all of us. It really demonstrates that if we're speaking to a person and we expect that person to speak back to us, the input and the output match, right? And so for students who have the ability to speak, the output might be naturally spoken language, right? But if that middle line there in the orange, if the input that we're given is spoken language, and then we're expecting a student that's having a little bit of difficulty with the spoken language, we're expecting them to use aided language, we're going to have a kiddo that's not really understanding what the expectations are or what the expectations are for them, right? But if we use aided language modeling, which includes speaking and pointing to symbols on the aided system, then our students see how their tools work, they hear how their tools are making meaning, and they're getting they're getting models verbally and visually of what the symbols represent. And then we have a great match, and that leads to great outcomes. So we want to make sure that the input that we're providing them matches the output that we're expecting them to produce. Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about routines as well. So routines can create predictable, meaningful opportunities for communication. They help to reduce the cognitive load because predictability helps students to focus on communicating rather than figuring out what's happening next. So building language through repetition, the same activities will include repeated vocabulary, right? Which we can then build stronger symbol and meaning connections. Routines also help support modeling. Those familiar routines make it easier for us to remember where the words are to consistently model in natural contexts. And it also helps to, as we talked about, increase independence and agency. Students can start to anticipate and initiate and make choices and request and refuse and say all done because they kind of know what's coming next, right? And we also can use routines to help support behavior through communication. When we have clear routines and we have AAC tools that are accessible, we give students ways to express and participate actively. So some examples of routines that might happen throughout the day, I'm sure you're all familiar with them because they're routine, are morning meeting and shared reading and snack time and music and movement, but it's also arrival and departure and bathroom time, right? Or at home bedtime routines. So lots of different ways that routines happen throughout our day. It's not just the schedule that we have displayed on the front of the classroom wall. Within each routine, there are many communication targets that we can focus on. So we can focus on core words, or the words that are used over and over again in our communication. We can work on social interaction. We can work on language functions, things like requesting and commenting and protesting and sharing information. The bottom line is really that routines are not boring because they're powerful. And with that, I talked about habituation. We have to remember, though, not to make habituation or not to have habituation create them kind of tuning out, right? We need to change it up just a little to keep them learning. So that's where that whole repetition with moderate differences comes in. For AAC users, routines that happen in their naturally occurring activities throughout the day, whatever the environment is, at school or at home, helps to build and support language. It helps to increase active participation in the activity, and it helps to develop independence by creating real reasons to communicate. Okay, let's touch briefly on what it means to make choices. So, choice making is one of the most powerful ways that we can support students with AAC. It gives students a voice and control over their learning and their environment, helping them to feel engaged and to feel valued. We all make a bunch of choices every day, right? We chose what we're going to wear today, might choose what station we're going to listen to on the radio or in the car. We might choose whether or not to add ice to our water, whether or not to speed up or slow down when that yellow light turns, right? We tend to jump to assuming or doing a lot for our kids that have additional challenges. Just so that we can get to that next step in our routines or the next thing that we have to do, we don't really always give them that same number of choices that we all have the chance to make or that their peers have the chance to make. And so we really need to be intentional about that and giving them those choices. So when students can make choices about what they do, how they're going to participate, walking fast or walking slow, right? Turning the music louder, turning it softer, which materials they might use, not just the red crayon or the blue crayon, but do you want to use the marker or do you want to use the pencil, right? They're really going to be more motivated and invested in that activity. Each time a student uses their AAC system to select an option, they're really practicing important language skills like requesting, commenting about what they like or don't like, or refusing. I guess that's what they don't like. The repeated practice really strengthens their vocabulary. It helps them to understand that their communication has an impact, and that when they say something, it creates a change or a reaction. So examples of choices that can be offered, there's lots of different things, right? But it's more than just about offering goldfish or cookies. Choices can be made throughout the day about what book to read, what song to sing, where to sit, which toy to play with, who to work with, when they want to be all done, whether or not they want something. I like these examples. I use them a lot. Slow, fast, loud, quiet. Lots of different ways that we can offer choices. And the choices really should be meaningful to them and then honored throughout the day. In addition, choice making helps to support independence and self-determination. Students gain confidence when they realize that they have an influence on their environment rather than just to follow directions, right? It also helps to reduce frustration and challenging behaviors because they have a meaningful way to express their needs and their wants and their preferences. Which one do you want to do first? Do you want to do the writing or do you want to do the cutting, right? Giving them a little bit of choice in that. ultimately, choice making is more than just a teaching strategy. It's really a fundamental part of giving our AAC users a voice and supporting their learning and including them fully in their daily activities. By consistently providing them opportunities to make choices, we're really helping them to develop communication, independence, and agency, and really setting that foundation for lifelong learning and exploring. Okay, let's talk a tiny bit about scripting. So scripting is referred to as like the repeated use of planned phrases and sentences or exchanges in really predictable contexts, right? So what does that mean? Really, it just means that we have a predicted set of lines that are probably going to occur in an activity. So we can set up our students for utilizing those. It really helps them to anticipate which language is going to come up in these situations. It builds confidence and fluency by experiencing that repetition that we keep talking about, repetition, in familiar situations. And to experience how those words and those phrases naturally can go together, and understanding what's going to come next and having that predictability can help them reduce some anxiety about what do I say or how am I going to communicate. It's kind of rehearsed and practiced to kind of remove some of that stage fright. Scripting also helps to support language and vocabulary development by reinforcing some of that core vocabulary and those phrases, experiencing more complex language than they might be able to produce without that script. Maybe without the script, they're putting 2 words together, but you provide them a script and now they're giving you a 5-word sentence, right? Something to kind of practice with. Or maybe they might take 1 turn if you just ask them an open-ended question, but if you provided them a script, maybe they're going to have 3 turns in that engagement. It also helps to encourage social communication and communication scripts by having that predictable structure for things like greetings or requesting or commenting and turn taking, really helping them to be more active participants in those routines that happen throughout their day, and providing opportunities for modeling as well. Adults and peers can model phrases and sentences repeatedly in those natural contexts and conversations so students can see how it's used in those real life situations again. So when are some times that we might use scripts? Well, we can use them for greetings, as I mentioned, and it's more than just saying hello. You say hello and you say, how are you? And then you might respond to that, right? You might use scripts during something like shared reading, saying something like, I like this part. And then maybe the next thing you might say would be, let's turn the page. And then the next one might be, keep reading, please. Another script that we might use occurs during jokes, right? The first line is knock, knock. The next line is who's there. We all know it comes next. Sharing information between home and school is another way that scripts can really be powerful. So at the end of the day, we can tell mom, that we spilled our chocolate milk all over us. And so we had to put on the pink pants instead of the blue pants. And we don't like the pink pants, right? Or maybe it's running an office errand and having a script that we are using to not only greet, but then to request and then to say a farewell. So all of these ways kind of help us to build that language into our daily routine in a very successful, low pressure kind of a way where it's already laid out for us and we just have to keep moving forward through that script. So to kind of recap here, some of the strategies that I just briefly went over, we can talk about these for days, but we talked about supporting language and communication competency through modeling and making sure that our input matches the output that we're expecting. We talked about leveraging the predictability and the repetitive nature of routines. We talked about providing choices throughout the day, including options for how or where or when, and not just the items that we can pick between. And we also talked about using scaffolding or using scripting as a scaffold to get through our language interactions, our communicative interactions. All right.
Right. Well, thank you, ladies, for sharing all of those communication partner strategies that we can use. We are really, I think, did a great job on time. That was a lot to pack in to a very short amount of time. Like Dana said, we could talk about these things for days. And of course, we could have practiced all of them, which makes it really fun. But definitely, that's not something we can do virtually and in an hour. So hopefully, you guys process some of that. It was fast. Does anybody have any questions that you want to either put in the chat or you want to unmute and ask us while we are still here? Looking at the chat. Oh, okay. Anyone have any videos of lots of mid-tech tools embedded in the classroom? Oh, that's a big question, Lisa. That's a loaded question. There's a lot of parts in that.
Sorry.
That's okay. Well, we can talk about that. I do have some video, but it is of kids using lots of mid-tech tools in a routine that's happening. A couple of different routines that happen in a classroom that I could share with you. So we could chat about that. Let's talk about that. Is anyone else? Any questions? No? All right. All right. Well, as we wrap this up, we just want you guys to take a minute to think about, was there a new strategy that you learned about today in regards to communication partners that was new to you or that maybe you were reminded of? I always love this when I go to when I go to trainings on things where I feel like, yeah, I know most of this stuff. I feel like I'm always reminded of a few things that I'm like, oh, that is a great strategy that I need to bring closer to the top of my toolbox. So maybe there was one that you were reminded of today that you can go and try. And that's that next question. What's one thing that you may want, one of these strategies that you may want to try when you get back to your class, which may be tomorrow or Friday, or may not be till the new year. But just kind of take a minute to think about that as we are wrapping up. Are there another question in the chat? All right.
I did just
Okay.
remember one resource, Lisa. If you look on YouTube for the Iowa Department of Education, they have a lot of really great video examples. I don't know if there's one specific for mid-tech type tools, but their videos are lovely. I think they had a grant where they were able to record a lot.
Dana, if you would send me that link, I'll add that to our home base as a resource that people could also
Sure.
check out, addition to Lisa. Yeah, send it to me in Teams and I'll add it after.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
cool. All right, thank you. All right, so if you guys would please take a minute to complete the survey on our session today. You can access it via the tiny URL or that QR code on the slide. And then also just a little reminder about we have several more. We're about halfway through our Inclusive Learning Circle series for this year, and our next one, I'll mention it again, but it's going to be on January 21st, and it's the subject is empowering learner agency through AT or with AT. And just a reminder, once you sign up for one, you can attend them all. So hopefully everybody got a chance, and maybe somebody can pop the URL into the chat so people could grab the survey chat from that. And just so you know that if you do attend, or if you have attended all 9 sessions or will attend or plan to attend all 9 sessions of our Inclusive Learning Circles series, that makes you eligible for zero point 0.9 CEUs from Sac State. So if you're somebody that is working still to move across on that salary schedule, that is something that once the series is completed, and you're eligible for that, you can reach out to us and then we can send you more information. And then for my SLPs or my SLPAs that were here today, I have a CEU form for this hour that you guys can use for your license. And for ASHA, as self-reporting, we do not report to ASHA, but you can hold on to that form for proof that you are here. And that's really it. Thank you. We are really grateful and thankful that as many of you showed up today. We know this is a crazy, crazy week. And so on behalf of myself and Dana and Tina, and the rest of our open access crew, we thank you very much. And we hope you have a wonderful, wonderful holiday with your family and friends. And we will see you in the new year.